Broadcasting live from Lothal. Good morning, Lothal. It's the Unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Season 1 recap of Good Morning Lothal, the Unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast. I'm Pete Solis, along with
Rolando Zamora.
How we doing, Rolly?
I'm great, man. How are you doing, Pete?
I'm great. We made it to the end of the season. We made it, and this is it. We're here.
Big milestone, yeah.
Yes,
excited.
Yes. So today's episode, like we said last week, is going to be a little bit different than the previous ones. It's a Season 1 recap, and we're also going to be looking at a couple comments that we got throughout the season and just kind of like shooting you guys back some love for reaching out in most cases. So before we get to that, Rolly, I want to remind people that it's not too late to like, share, and subscribe this podcast. All you got to do, especially on YouTube, hit that little bell with the notifications so that you can know when we drop a new episode. You'll get a little notification on that. Share it with your friends. Let them know. Any Star Wars fans in your life, let them know that there's two semi-cool dudes who like to talk about Star Wars on a weekly basis that they can watch. So very much appreciate if you do that. So, like I said, we are not going to be reviewing a particular episode today. We're just going to be recapping the season and just kind of general discussion. But before we get to all that, Rolly, what's happening around the galaxy?
Let's see what's happening this week in Star Wars.
So another relatively quiet week in the galaxy, but we do have a couple of things of note that I want to touch on aside from our birthday section. Number one, the Book of Boba Fett and Star Wars Visions have received Emmy nominations in various categories. So I thought that was some really awesome news. I have not personally finished watching Visions. Kind of hurts for me to say that as a Star Wars fan. I do need to get back and do that, especially since Visions is going to drop a second season. So that kind of gives you some insight into the success of that. And you know what's funny, Pete? I actually saw some rumors just like yesterday of a second season of Book of Boba Fett, which I want to follow up and see if anything develops out of that. But apparently, I would have assumed that they would have made a second season. I'm still kind of in shock because it did seem like they added some closure to Boba towards the end there. But I'd love to see a second season of that show, given the circumstances that I wasn't really like fully content with the first season. So if there's a way they can give me more of it and then really get into Boba's character a bit more, I'm all for it. So that I'm gonna wait and see this week how that develops. But apparently it was kind of like a leak on like a Spanish Disney Plus title screen. So I wonder how true that is, or maybe it's a fake and I'm just being duped. But you never know. More often than not in this fandom, these things that even if they're not true, it's just like the fandom manifests it into existence, so to say. And sometimes it ends up being like a really awesome thing. I think of Rosario Dawson basically being fan casted, and sure enough, she shows up and she's Ahsoka. No,
that's. I mean, switching gears over to the Marvel universe was exactly what happened with Reed Richards. Everybody wanted John Krasinski to be him, and they gave it to us. And whether it was a one shot or not, we got it. You can't say that we didn't get it, what we wanted.
Yeah. So the fan voice is definitely heard, especially when it's like under the best circumstances, right? Right. And it's not the normal complaining. It's like, oh, we the fans, we want to see this. And, sure enough, they show up. And it's just like, it's completely awesome because it feels like we're definitely part of the universe as well because of those things.
Yeah, we're all producers. We should list all of us at the end of the credits. And go ahead. Okay, I was going to say, just speaking of Visions, I remember when we were doing we were ranking the TV show spinoffs, and it was not on the list for it, and I guess it's because you hadn't finished it, right? Was that?
Oh, so no.
Or did you forget it?
No. No. Actually, I wanted to follow the TikTok trend, and they specifically did the 7 TV series that we listed, and I'm pretty sure Visions was not included on that because Visions is short stories. Each individual episode is a different short story of some version of Star Wars in an anime universe that the creator wanted to showcase.
I believe that's called an anthology series or something like that, right?
I think you would know better than me.
Kind of like each episode is its own individual serialized show story. Okay. Yeah. Anyway,
And then in other news in This Week in Star Wars, I excluded a bit of detail in our previous This Week in Star Wars. So this news actually from a couple of weeks ago that I want to catch up on. I think Pete actually asked me about this and I gave the wrong answer. So think of this as almost like an editor note as well. There was more specifics given on the Andor series that's coming up here very soon, next month, I believe in August. So they did already specifically say Andor is going to be 2 seasons and they're each going to be 12 episodes, which I think is incredibly awesome because as much as I've been enjoying these 6 episode series that Star Wars and Marvel have been doing, I always feel left wanting a bit more. And what's really awesome is they're already giving a timeline of exactly what you're going to see. So I don't see it as fluff. I think we're going to get continuous, like nonstop story and action in it.
Excellent.
So they specifically came out and said the first season is going to span 5 years of Andor's life. So basically you're looking like from 2 to 3 episodes of 1 year of progress. So the story is going to move for certain. Okay. And then in the second season, you're talking it's going to span 4 years. So between 2 seasons, it's going to be 9 years of Cassian's life, leading into Rogue One. So I'm really excited to see it after reading the details that they gave on that.
Oh, sweet. That's cool. I'm hopeful that maybe Jyn Erso shows up. I know that they don't meet until Rogue One, but that would be awesome because I have a major crush on her. That's the only reason I want to see her. She's got those bunny teeth and I love her. Anyway.
Yeah, she's such a cool character too in the show, or rather in the movie, even though we only got the one movie with her. It's just a really awesome character from really a non-rebel standpoint. She's kind of just brought into it, but she's very much neutral. So I thought it was a really awesome movie just to kind of go back to Rogue One a bit.
Now I want to watch it again. But anyway.
Isn't that your most rewatched one? Your favorite film?
It might be because it's just like we were talking about. It's like a beginning, middle, and end complete story right there. And
yeah,
it's just freaking awesome. It's just an amazing movie. Anyway.
And I also think it's because since it's standalone, you can kind of comfortably put it on and not feel like now I got to watch 3 prequel movies or 3 original trilogy movies and so forth. So yeah,
and I really like one of the new characters that showed up. I really like. I love Forrest Whitaker. Period. I love everything he's in. But that character of Saw Gerrera was a really good character. I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, and I love how we get Saw Gerrera in Clone Wars also. He does come out, and you know what? I note on that animated. Let's talk about animated features. Saw Gerrera actually came out in Clone Wars before he came out in Rogue One. So there you go. Just fun fact.
That is a fun fact. Was it? Okay. Now, granted, I was new to Clone Wars, so I'm pretty sure I watched that afterwards. So I guess to me, I saw him first in the live action version. So that's cool.
Yeah, no, same here. Because immediately when I saw Saw Gerrera show up in Clone Wars, because I recently watched Clone Wars for the first time during the pandemic, 2019. So I was like, wait a minute, the cogs are explaining. I was like, he came out in this before we saw him in Rogue One, so they were already pulling from the cartoons at that point, which I thought was super awesome. So let's get to birthdays. We got a lot of big name birthdays this week. Number 1, Ben Burke. He is the original sound designer for most of the entire Star Wars film saga. Yeah,
I'm always appreciative whenever the spotlight is shown on the people behind the scenes, because I am a person behind the scenes for a lot of productions. So it's really nice to be noticed and appreciated. So I'm pretty. Is he you wouldn't know this, but I was telling my son the other day, he was watching Star Wars, and I told him, the sound that sound of the blaster is actually a pipe wrench hitting one of those cables that's attached to the phone poles. That's how they got that sound. And he was like, what? No way. And I'm like, no, seriously. So we looked up a video and it was like, nope, sure enough, that's how they got the sound. It was just something that simple became a blaster sound. So I'm curious if he's one of the ones that came up with that. So anyway.
Oh, no, I'm definitely, I've seen a lot of those old, behind the scenes, anything Star Wars related. And this guy always comes up because he has such a huge contribution to the Star Wars universe. And every time I see it, I'm it's mind blowing to me, because how do you start from nothing? You're told that this is the task. I need you to make this sound. How do you know to go to said objects to start creating it? And it's just we see it on the screen and we're spoiled. It's like, well, that's the sound of the TIE fighter, that's Screech, or that's the sound of the blaster, and this guy is behind the scenes and he invented it. Like, it's really some like overlooked, like very intricate, well-designed work. Yeah, so
it is always overlooked. So I'm really glad to, especially going back to that ILM documentary. I'm pretty sure that's going to be mentioned. But anyway,
for sure.
I'm glad you added him to the list because yes, he was definitely a big part of this series that we love.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we also have Harrison Ford, who of course Han Solo. So his birthday was July 13th. Ben Burke's was July 12th, just for clarification. Speaking of Forrest Whitaker, July 13th as well, and he is Saw Gerrera in Rogue One. And then here's one of my favorite characters, P. I'm sure you might agree on. Phoebe Waller-Bridge. She voices L337 in Solo.
And that was the droid that Lando Calrissian may or may not have been, having relations with. He's a smooth talker, as you said.
Yeah, I loved how they make the connection to Empire Strikes Back, specifically because in Solo, they basically go on to tell you that L3 becomes part of the Millennium Falcon. And as soon as they plug her head into it, she kind of, I have to see the film. I haven't seen it in a while, but they basically kind of plug her dome into the Falcon, right? And it's funny because if you think back to the original trilogy, the Falcon communicates back. They always tell C-3PO, talk to the Falcon and see what's going on.
That's true. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, and 3PO, I remember in Empire specifically tells Han, like, I don't know where your ship learned its manners, but it's incredibly rude. He says something along those lines. And I remember when I first saw Solo and they showed the sass that this character has, which is amazing. I was like, I immediately thought of that scene. I was like, man, how cool, like they did such an amazing job connecting L3 to the dialogue that C-3PO gives in a movie that was made in 1980. So that's mind blowing. I never even thought of that. That's the foresight to have that. I guess maybe it's not foresight because they didn't think of it back then, but just to like connect the dots like that's pretty incredible. I did not think about that. Not to mention the actress that plays, Phoebe. Have you seen her show on, I think it's Amazon. It's called Fleabag. I have not. I was kind of looking into it's really her filmography when I was looking this up because I was like, she looks familiar, but I couldn't actually pinpoint her to anything. So yeah, she got her own show a couple years ago called Fleabag, and I think it went to like season 2 or 3. They might be making a new one. I'm not sure, but I know she was Emmy nominated. She might have even won. I'm not sure, but it is a really funny show, and she's just got that same kind of wit and sass, and she's kind of a piece of shit a little bit, but that's kind of like her charm. And the thing about her is like kind of like Deadpool. She's always breaking the fourth wall and talking directly to the camera. So it's a pretty good series. I recommend you check it out if you like. Yeah, I gotta check that one out for sure. And then last on our birthday list to round it out, Billie Lourd, July 17th. She plays Lieutenant Connix in the sequel trilogy. And for anybody who's not too familiar with more of her background, she is actually Carrie Fisher's daughter. So right. I thought it was really cool that she got to share those moments with her mother in the sequel trilogy before Carrie Fisher unfortunately passed away. So that's got to be awesome. I was really glad to see them interacting, even if it was computer generated in some scenes, but that was pretty cool. All right, so moving on to some viewer comments. We've been saying all season that we're going to talk about whoever has been writing in and has been so gracious as to drop us some comments and some love. So we're just going to kind of show the spotlight on you for a minute and go back and rewind back to episode 1. I don't exactly remember what it is, Rolly, you were talking about, but Tanya Martinez says, Rolly is right. Investing time into watching a series was definitely harder to do than sitting for a couple hours for a movie. But in the case of Rebels, it was worth it. Looking forward to episode 2. So we want to thank Tanya for writing in. Do we know Tanya? Or is it Tanya's a good friend of mine. She's an ex-coworker. Her and her husband, Danny Solis, who's actually the next commenter here. They're very supportive. Not only are they really good friends of mine, but they've been very supportive in the podcast. And I called Tanya. I told her ages ago, hey, because you need to watch the animated series. She's another Padawan, basically, like you were. Right. And sure enough, she got, I think she kind of struggled through season 1 of the Clone Wars, and then sure enough, she got into season 2, and it was just like a freight train for her. And she just got engulfed with it. And I don't remember if she kind of brought Danny into it, but Danny messages me all the time, and he comments a lot on our channel. And I can tell he's just like, I feel like I made them even more Star Wars fans, even after they finished the series, because they're engaged with our podcast. They're like weekly listeners, which I'm very appreciative of them for it, but I'm also enjoying that I think I am pulling them even deeper into the Star Wars rabbit hole that I'm like completely consumed in. So I'm loving it. So thanks, Tanya and Danny. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, just to pad what you're saying there, that was his exact comment. It says, I too blame Rolly for my renewed obsession in Star Wars. Great podcast. So thank you both, Tanya and Danny. We really appreciate it. Moving on to another friend of ours. I like to affectionately call him Psycho Mike. Psycho Mike Zuniga says, nothing makes me happier to see fans talk about Rebels and Clone Wars. Dave Filoni and his team work so diligently on these shows, and it's a credit to their story/universe and these shows that sets the foundation for the live action shows like Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. They just become so much more enjoyable, especially when you've been a diehard fan of Star Wars since the original trilogy. Great podcast, guys. I love it. So thank you so much, Mike, for that. Mike,
yeah, thanks, Mike.
Definitely a super fan.
Yeah, and Mike makes it a point to message me specifically early on Wednesdays. Mind you, I'm still preparing my social media post for our podcast drop, and he's already like, I just listened to the podcast, great episode. You guys did such a great job, and I'm just like, thanks, Mike. I'm just about to shower barely for the day, but I appreciate it.
Mike, why aren't you messaging me, man? I want to hear from you too. But anyway, moving on. Miguel Gutierrez messaged us from episode 3, and he says Grievous's guards are called Magna guards. I guess I remember we were talking about the bow staff, like the electrified bow staff that Zeb carries, and you said it's kind of like Grievous's guards, but you couldn't remember what they were called. So thank you, Miguel, for putting it out there. They're called. Yeah,
I actually spoke to him when he commented. He was like, I made a comment and I feel like I came off critical, but that wasn't my intent. And I was like, no, man, like those are the comments that I like to see. And I always say it in our episodes, like if I say something incorrect or you want to give better detail on it, by all means. So when he told me Magna Guards, I was like, yeah, thanks for letting me know, because that is something I would have never even looked up. So right. I like to be as best informed as I can. So great example of dropping the comments and dropping a correction or a detail. That I love it.
Thank you. So here's a name you're going to hear a couple times, because this is another super fan of ours, Lubaka. Great name. Lubaka says, the TIE fighters are arguably the worst ship in Star Wars, not because of its appearance, which is metal AF, but because of its design. They have no shields. This shows how little the Empire cared about its military service members, but also its confidence. Great point. We don't care that our fighters have no shields. We have the numbers and we will overwhelm you. The Empire could have included shields, but never did. A-holes. # support the stormtroopers. Excellent. Thank you for that, Lubaka. And yes, you're absolutely right. The design looks badass, but yes, there are no shields on it. It's basically looks like a flying lamp, like with two shades on its side, but that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. And great points on the Empire. It kind of speaks to the goofiness that I've spoken about, how they just overlook so much, because in their point of view, they're unstoppable. Like they're unmatched. They've already won the war, so they can afford to just like not pay attention to petty things. And apparently those petty things include their TIE fighter pilots' safety.
Exactly. So from episode 4, Lubaka once again hits us with, for a split second, I thought Luminara herself was alive doing force projection. So did I. Then I realized that she was dead. Then I thought maybe she was doing force stuff beyond the grave. But then why would Luminara's force ghost be in prison garbs and cuffs? Makes no sense. Who would do that? I never considered it was anything other than a hologram versus Sith sorcery. I don't recall seeing a projection device, so I'm now thinking sorcery. And that kind of hits what you were saying, which is you were reading that book where, is it Dark Disciple? The book that you were reading that was
this one, he's making reference to Path of Destruction, the Darth Bane trilogy.
Okay, that's what it was.
Yeah,
okay.
Lubaka is a really good friend of mine who I also dragged into reading the Darth Bane trilogy with me, and him and another friend of mine, they absolutely loved it. We couldn't stop raving about that book. So I'm happy that he started making those connections with our Rebels podcast as well. So
right. So from episode 7, Lubaka says, it's hard to have a definite top 3, so I'll just provide some of my favorites from Clone Wars specifically. I think this is when we were talking about ranking our favorite Jedis.
Yeah, I think Force wielders I think the original question was favorite characters, and I was like, I don't know, I can't mix the non-force wielders and force wielders together, so I just went with force wielders.
Okay, yeah, so our favorite characters from the show. So this was his list. Number 1 is Ahsoka for 1,000 reasons, obviously. Number 2 is Obi-Wan, especially related to his relationship with Anakin, his feud with Maul, and his relationship with a certain Mandalorian, and how that is juxtaposed with his guidance of Anakin regarding attachments.
Yeah, and for clarity, for anybody who hasn't seen Clone Wars yet, Lubaka is actually referring to Obi-Wan's desire for a relationship with Duchess Satine, who was actually the Queen of Mandalore and Bo-Katan's sister. So really awesome reference you dropped there, Lou. Appreciate it.
And then his third one is, of course, the clones. I know that's really several characters, but I'll narrow it down to 5s and Rex, specifically regarding their roles and actions related to Order 66. So for him to put the clones, those clones and specifically as on his list of favorites, that's pretty cool, because yes, it is true, especially what he's saying about Order 66 and them not following it.
Yeah, and again, for anybody who hasn't seen Clone Wars, anybody that I can send down that that path, I tell them, pay attention to the names of the clones from the beginning, because I remember you get far into it and you realize such an important role that they play, and you're like, man, I wish I was like paying attention when they were talking about 5s, when they were talking about Echo, getting into the Bad Batch, and they all play this role. If a name is dropped on a clone in the Clone Wars, they play a significant role in the series. So appreciate the shout out to 5s there. I wasn't expecting that one, but that is a great arc in season 6 of Clone Wars. Yeah.
So GM Day 1121, this is their list. What? Green Day?
Green Day 1121.
Okay. Oh, that's a GRN. Excuse me. I thought it was GM. Okay, that makes it Green Day 1121. Sorry. Maybe it would help if I did this. Hold on a second. Oh yeah, there we go. Anyway,
he just put on his glasses, by the way, for the audio listeners.
So anyway, their list is Ahsoka number 1 again. Number 2 is Thrawn, and number 3 is Maul. Now, I want to circle back and say Thrawn is a badass character, and I can't say too much about him because he plays into future episodes that we haven't gotten to yet, but he is definitely became one of my top 10, let's just say, characters, maybe even top 5. No, maybe top 10. But anyway, he is a badass character, and I'm glad that Green Day 1121 put them on their list.
Yes.
Danny Solis, top 3 Jedi: Qui-Gon Jinn, Mace Windu, and Ahsoka Tano. So I don't know if that's in any particular order, but those are 3 definite. I would say that if we're talking Jedis, those got to be in the top 5 for sure.
Yeah, and I noticed that he edited the comment because he originally wrote Mace Windy. So when I saw that, I immediately texted him and I was like, dude, I'm dying. I saw Windy, and it just rolled off the tongue like perfectly, and I thought it was hilarious. And he actually texted me back. He's like, well, coincidentally, you could technically say he was blown off of the office, or the senator's office. And I just started laughing even more. I was like, touche.
That is funny, man. Okay, so from episode 9, Danny Solis again says, awesome episode. I really enjoy any episode that Master Yoda comes out in and shares wisdom in his signature confusing way. So
yeah, absolutely.
This is in reference to when Yoda came out as the guiding light spheres or whatever in that episode to lead when they went into the
Jedi temple.
It was a Jedi. Yeah. That's what it was. Tanya says, since Rolly went off topic, I'm going to take it more off topic. In the grand scheme of things, couldn't it be possible that Quinlan Voss could have been the one who rescued Grogu? Since Tala says that he's been smuggling younglings, so maybe we don't see his full story here, but we do see him in Mando. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, excellent point, Tanya. For starters, this is actually referenced because we were somewhat analyzing the Kenobi series.
Yes.
I think it is very possible that Quinlan Vos could be the one that rescued Grogu. Clearly he's alive now. We have clarity on that from the Kenobi series. We didn't see him, like I was kind of at least hoping to get a cameo from, but I'm also happy because that leaves the possibility we're going to get some more on him in some type of different series. I actually kind of hope that it was Barriss Offee that rescues Grogu, because Barriss Offee actually betrays the Jedi Order in Clone Wars, and I just think it would have like such a great character arc for her to come back and actually be the one to, you know, to rescue Grogu and like bring her back to the light. Because if you recall, or rather if I recall correctly, I don't believe Barriss Offee was totally like misguided in what her thought process was, not to come off as too Sith. Pete is the Sith, and you know, in this relationship, but her actions definitely were uncalled for. But her reasoning, like I said, it wasn't totally unfounded. So I think that it would be really cool for Barriss Offee to come back. I think it would be cool if she comes out in the Ahsoka series, because she developed such a strong bond with Ahsoka in the Clone Wars. So if Ahsoka plays any role in that, I think that would be really awesome.
No, that's true. Any new characters that bring in Jedis that we only have seen cameos of, heard of, or maybe seen in the animated version, to see them in live action is, I mean, I'm looking forward to that no matter what.
Yeah, for sure.
So from episode 10, Tanya Martinez once again says, when Rolly said he thinks Omega is the first Force-sensitive clone, I think she's a Force-sensitive clone along with Grogu. I still want to believe he's a clone. I never thought of it that way, that Grogu was a clone based on off of Yoda's DNA or something like that, I would suppose.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I wouldn't totally put it off, because in Attack of the Clones, if I'm not mistaken, if you remember, Yoda leaves on his own to go check out the cloning facilities, and he shows up with the clone army to rescue the Jedi when they're at the Battle of Geonosis. So I wouldn't totally put it past them if Yoda, for whatever reason, decided to tamper with that, or
maybe he knew that like his species was pretty much extinct after him, so he wanted to continue it, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a possibility on that. We're definitely gonna get into some type of cloning conversation between the Bad Batch, and I'd still like to see it in The Mandalorian, because they showed the beginning of the clones, like the Snoke-like clones at the end of Mando season 2, and definitely they want Grogu for cloning related purposes. The Empire keeps trying to get him, so I think that there is something to that for sure.
Okay, so Danny Solis says, definitely not what I was expecting in the Obi-Wan series. Don't get me wrong, I'm really liking what they did with it and his guardianship over Leia. I was expecting to see a lot of flashbacks, like in Boba, him dealing with his failures with Anakin, and a lot of training moments the way Yoda instructed. My thought was Disney would try to explain how he was able to evade the Empire for so long, but him being a hero and savior made for a better story. That is true. Guess they really couldn't tell us a story of how he's the last of his kind when we know there's so many Jedi and Force-sensitive individuals alive and adventuring around the galaxy. Well put. That is a very good point. I mean, just to expand on what you said, yes, making him the hero and savior is obviously what they wanted to do for his series, but it would have made more sense to show a little bit more flashbacks of the period between right after Vader is, the fight on Mustafar, and there, of how he was able to hide and whatnot, but they just and I know Danny dropped this comment because if you guys remember, I was kind of like already getting kind of a little frustrated. I think it was like episode 4 of Obi-Wan, right?
And I take full responsibility for that, because I always preach patience, and my impatience showed there. But I was concerned because I was like, there's only 2 episodes left, and I don't know where the story's going. And thankfully Deborah Chow and the team at Disney just like completely pulled me out of that like rabbit hole of concern, because they absolutely smashed the last 2 episodes of Obi-Wan, And as for me, my thought process is like, you got to stick to your guns. You have to let the story develop, finish in this case. And those last 2 episodes were easily some of the best Star Wars content I've ever seen, period. So series ended up being an incredible success, in my opinion.
Okay, side note right now. Did you see that I've seen several postings of some fan who made like a 2.5 hour edit of the Obi-Wan show, took all 6 episodes, 4.5 hours or whatever it adds up to, and chopped it down to a concise movie, a 2.5 hour movie. Did you hear about that?
I did not, but I mean, based off of my concern from some of the middle episodes, I can imagine that they probably came out amazing, and I'd be interested to see that. Yeah,
me too. I pretty sure I have it open on a tab somewhere, but I have not actually pulled the trigger to watch it. But yeah, that's something to look into, and I guess hurry up and watch it before it gets pulled down. Okay, moving on from episode 11. I Am Batman 49 says, like the podcast, but starting to lose interest. I know there's a lot going on in the world of Star Wars currently, but only getting 15 minutes of Rebels per show is starting to lose me. Now, we were debating whether we were going to actually highlight this one because it seems like a bit of a criticism, but we are equal opportunists. Is that correct, Broly?
Yeah, that's correct. When I saw this comment, I think at that point we were talking about doing the comments on one of the episodes, and I told Pete, no, I want to show this because this is, again, I appreciate the feedback on what the viewers and the listeners want to see. And I remember at inception of our podcast, we kind of like, how much current Star Wars do we do? Because there's 2 things I think we're dealing with. There's people that they haven't seen the animated series, so they're not going to want to listen to a Rebels podcast when they haven't even seen Clone Wars. And then number 2 is, what about the people that have already seen Rebels? Are they going to want to rewatch it and follow along with our podcast? And I love this comment because that's the audience that I wanted to target. And I'm Batman 49. Thank you so much for pointing out that Rebels was your priority in our podcast, because we're trying to satisfy the audience. I love talking about current Star Wars, but when you dropped this comment, I thought, you know what, you're here for for what we're here for, and you're kind of like the guy who, instead of like stopping us after we're done talking about current Star Wars, you actually want to jump to that portion. Right. And after that comment was dropped, I was like, you know what, we really do need to make a more healthier balance of Rebels and current Star Wars. We include current Star Wars not necessarily to cater to people that haven't seen Rebels, but because it ties into Rebels. Everything in the Star Wars universe meshes together, and I want to showcase that. So when Kenobi was coming out, I want to showcase the stuff that stands out, that ties into Rebels. And there's stuff in that show that I can't talk about yet because it references to future Rebels episodes, so it's gonna come back. But yeah, that was our thing there. And specifically on that episode, I do also apologize. That is the one where I had a severely horrible internet connection, so there towards the end, it legitimately was a very short Rebels analysis because I was frustrated, and I wanted us to get to the end of the recording so that Pete didn't have a miserable time editing. So yeah, that's also part of the reason on that. I apologize, but again, thanks so much for being transparent. And I love the fact that there are true Rebels fans tuning in and listening to our podcast for that reason. So thanks.
Right. And just as from a production standpoint, like, I know you guys never see the behind the scenes, but like when I'm editing this thing and on my timeline, it's broken up into sections. It's got intro, it's got Week in Star Wars, it's got, the birthdays and everything, all of our segments that we do. And you can see just based on the size of the clips. And after this comment, I can tell you for sure, the Rebels portion at the very end before the outro has been the biggest segment moving forward. So we really are trying to, we are a Star Wars Rebels rewatch podcast, so we're going to talk more about Star Wars Rebels. So that was all thanks to I Am Batman 49. So if you're still listening, you're still watching, thank you.
Yeah, hope he is.
Okay, so moving on. Psycho Mike once again says, as per Google, The Waterboy, Meet Joe Black, and The Siege premiered at the Phantom Menace trailer in 1998. So if I had to guess, it was probably The Waterboy that I went and watched 4 or 5 times because, I mean, that movie is just hilarious to begin with.
Yeah.
I've never actually seen Meet Joe Black. Still haven't for the last 23 years. So I don't know. And The Siege, I probably watched that once at home. But so if I had to guess, then yes, it was The Waterboy that I kept going and going and going because not only did I get a funny ass movie, I also got the Phantom Menace trailer before it.
Yeah.
Okay, from episode 13, we had an editor's note. I guess Rolly said, I incorrectly referenced Chopper as Spectre 6, who is actually Ezra Bridger. Chopper is actually Spectre 3. Sorry, Chop. So,
yeah, again, apologies to Chopper directly. So I gave him the very last Spectre number when he clearly merited number 3 right after Kanan and Hera. So big mishap, big mistake there.
Right.
I'm pretty sure he would have knocked me off right off the Ghost as well after saying that.
Yes, he would have. Lubaka's back, and he says, I'm convinced that Rebels Alliance characters have a high stealth stat. There's a ton of goofy scenes where such characters sneak past Imperials, the latest one being the scene in Kenobi where Obi-Wan and Leia sneak right past Imperials by covering themselves in an oversized coat. Very Scooby-Doo type stuff. LOL. So yeah, that's obviously in reference to what he said. It was when that oversized coat thing, which got a lot of heat online about that and got some criticism, but I didn't mind it. I thought it was cute. Anything involving Leia was cute to me, so I mean, I didn't have a problem with it. But yeah, he's right. There are a lot of scenes, not only in that scene and other scenes, where they really try to paint the Imperials, specifically the stormtroopers, as like really, really stupid. Like they're just kind of like aloof kind of guards. So this was just another example of it. Okay, so episode 14, Danny Solis. I love this comment. He says, I think I cried when Ahsoka was revealed. So yeah, that's funny. That he's of course making reference to the season finale where Fulcrum is revealed to be Ahsoka, and that was a really big moment, and it was enough to make a grown man cry. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, Danny. That's exactly how I felt when I saw Rebels for the first time.
So those comments were from YouTube, people that have been watching since day one, a couple of them, and we really appreciate everybody who did that. We got a couple on Facebook. There was a couple that I wanted to highlight. Mike Zuniga, once again, Psycho Mike, says, same goes for the podcast. He dropped a little GIF that said, I wouldn't be the person I am today if it wasn't for Star Wars. And he says, same goes for the podcast. Love what you all do. And that was really cool of him to say. And, Rolly replied and said, thank you, Mike. Very much appreciated. And Mike had more to say because he came back and said, heck yeah, man. Much deserved. Podcast was great today. So he really appreciated it. I believe we were talking about this was just this past week, right?
Yeah, the season 1 finale, which if you guys haven't heard and you're like kind of like just you fell into our channel, go watch that one. I was super happy and very content with how we analyzed that last episode. So
it was overall our best episode. Moving on to Instagram, Lubaka found us on Instagram and he said, congrats on reaching the season finale. It was fire. Thank you again, Lubaka. And then Shut Up Alec, who's a friend of mine from back in the day, my radio station days, he said it's dope with the rock and roll hand signals. So
nice.
Thank you very much, Alec. He was one of the first ones. In fact, that comment came off of the promo that we made 15 weeks ago announcing the show. So he's been listening since day one. So we really appreciate that.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it.
All right, Rolly. Well, that closes the the listener comments section. So we wanted to roll into the recap of season 1. What specifically did you want to talk about that?
I guess for starters, what were your thoughts on season 1 overall specifically after you've seen this? I guess this will be now your second viewing, Pete.
Yes.
What do you think of season 1?
Well, it's interesting. And I was preparing for this question. The first time I watched it, after you said, hey man, you got to go watch it, I binged it. So I was watching 3 or 4 a night, that kind of thing. And I was just like burning through them to try and get the story, not only because I wanted to accomplish my goal of watching it, but also because it was so intriguing that I just kept having to watch more and more and more. This time around, I'm watching it more like a traditional series that drops every week. You know what I'm saying? Because I watch it right before we record, so it's kind of like it gives me that week to process and to buffer. Not to mention the fact that we're doing this podcast, so it's the general Star Wars talk that gets weaved into it. it kind of like expands, my universe, so to speak. It expands my the way that I view it through that prism of a whole different light. So it's almost like watching it again for the first time, I guess, is long answer to say that. But I very much enjoyed it. There were a couple of dips, a couple of filler episodes that we talked about, but overall there was, out of the 15 episodes that there were, I would say 10 of them were actual standouts that really, really pushed that storyline forward. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I know that it's going to get even better, so I'm really looking forward to jumping into season 2 next week.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that, on the whole binging thing. This is the let's say the third time that I've watched Rebels, so I've rewatched it once, so this is my second rewatch technically. Now that we're doing it episode by episode, the level of detail that I'm catching on every individual episode is it's so much higher than before. I felt when I rewatched it the second time, it was great, because now I'm aware of the beginning and the end, the character development, and I'm seeing that character development and paying more attention to it at the beginning of the series going through. But this time around, it's like, man, I'm catching new things, and I'm loving it even more. Specifically in season 1, I always tell my friends, season 1 of Rebels is a little bit rough. It really picks up steam season 2, 3, and 4. But after doing this podcast and doing it episode by episode, I think you're right. There's way more great episodes in season 1 than I really gave it credit for. So I'm definitely going to change my, thought process and comments on it after seeing the season 1, because there really were a lot of great episodes, and it's something that I'm probably personally going to be comparing to once I get into season 2, because I give season 2, 3, and 4 so much more praise in the past over this season, and now I'm thinking maybe I was a bit mistaken on that one. So right. I've thoroughly enjoyed season 1. I thought we were gonna have more filler, and I was totally wrong. So great start to Rebels.
I agree. Did you have any standout episodes that were your favorites?
Yeah, I had a few. One of them, for sure, coming off that big season finale, Fire Across the Galaxy. Right. My favorite character, Ahsoka Tano, shows up. The stakes are high. It's just a great all-around episode from beginning to end. If you guys remember, I loved Ezra's speech and call to action. That's one of those details that I'm pointing out when, it took me 3 times to watch that episode. Right. To realize the importance of that scene. And yes, I did indeed YouTube bookmark that speech because I loved it so much. I loved the Idiot's Array episode, which was the Lando episode. Yes. It's a fun episode, but like we said, the adding Billy D. Williams as the voice, it just really added a lot to Lando's character for me. And if you remember one of our earliest podcasts, it's actually the second episode of Rebels. It was called Droids in Distress. That's the one where R2-D2 and C-3PO show up. And again, just a fun episode, but I don't know if maybe it's just the nostalgia, but I loved how you saw the interaction between R2 and Chopper. Mm-hmm. I thought that was super cool, because I think R2 is the original like sassy droid, and then every single time something new comes out, it's like, okay, how do we take the sass and just increase it? And Chop is like at the complete like not opposite end, but like the complete like ultimate form of droid sass. So I like the interaction there. If I didn't touch on any of, what about you, Pete, as far as favorite episodes?
I think obviously the season finale was amazing. You can't really top that one with the big reveals at the end, and of course ending it with Vader and his breathing is always going to be the top for me. But the two that stand out to me, one of them you mentioned, Idiot's Array. I did love it just simply because of Billy D. Williams, like you said. But if I had to pick like a 1B as far as my favorite episodes, I really enjoyed the Path of the Jedi episode, which was when they had to go through the Jedi Temple. That is a lot of stuff happened there. I mean, it showed Kanan starting to accept his role as master of Ezra Bridger. It showed obviously Ezra Bridger going into his stepping into the shoes of what a great Jedi is supposed to be. I love the way that the temple was kind of messing with their heads and those visions that he was having. I loved that he got his lightsaber kyber crystal at the end, and of course, what's not to love about Frank Oz reprising the role of Yoda with the voice guiding him. So there was a lot of cool stuff that happened in that I really, really enjoyed.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't believe I didn't include that episode. That's a oversight on my part.
No, that's cool.
Who would you say is your favorite Ghost crew member after seeing season 1?
I saw that on your list here, and I'm like, God, what am I supposed to say to this?
As soon as I wrote that question, even until this point, I don't have my answer, but I'm putting you on the spot. I'm gonna let you go first.
Okay, if I had to choose, if I had to choose, it's hard not to say Kanan Jarrus, because of the fact that he's the leader and he's the Jedi Master, and he's kind of the most grounded character in the Star Wars lore. Now, as far as like a fun character, when I watched it the first time, I think I texted you this. I said Zeb is going to be my favorite character in this because he's just he's a fun, like, kind of a jerk, kind of a bully character, and I love the interaction with him and Ezra. But I'm going to go wild card here, and I'm going to say Chopper is my favorite character of the Ghost series.
Did you go wild card? Because I feel like that's a slam dunk, easy one to say.
I can't. Okay, then if you're going to put me on the spot, I really can't decide. So I'm going to go with my gut, and I'm going to say Zeb is my favorite character, favorite Ghost crew member.
I really appreciate that you're having trouble with it, because that speaks volumes to how much each character like contributes to this show. Because it's hard for me to choose to, even if you ask me, can you rank them? I would be like, I'd be switching my list constantly. For me, from season 1, I think my favorite Ghost crew member definitely does have to be Spectre 1, Kanan Jarrus. The reason I say that is, if you guys recall, like I said, when I first started watching Rebels, Kanan wasn't my favorite character. He was probably my least favorite character.
Right.
But, specifically referencing Path of the Jedi, and then, of course, the season finale, you see Kanan take these huge steps in his role as a master to Ezra Bridger. And he's just hard not to love, you because he's doing it on his own. The Jedi, are basically all but extinct, and he's doing it, with no master guiding him. He's just doing it from his gut and from what he knows is right. And I'd have to include also, speaking on that, Hera. I think Hera might be easily, in my opinion, one of the most unappreciated rebels in the Star Wars universe, and I rank her high for me, specifically from season 1, talking about favorite crew members, because she's the constant professional on the team, even more so than the 2 Jedi that are part of the Ghosts. She's always taking care of business, always making the tough decisions. It does not matter the consequences. She knows what is expected of her, and how can you put past the fact that she is a badass pilot? And I'm I can't wait to see more of that in the following seasons. And I think I mentioned this in one of the previous episodes. I love how she breaks the mold of what a Twi'lek character is in the Star Wars universe. This is a pilot. She's a master pilot for all intensive reasons, and the Twi'lek are typically the dancers, the entertainers, and that's not Hera. I absolutely love that about her character. So I'd probably rank Kanan and Hera as my 2 favorite members from the first season.
Right. And just a little side note that it doesn't mean anything but to me, so I'm going to share it with you. Maybe this might resonate with some of you. There was a video game called Disney Infinity, and it was one of those where it had this little portal thing, and they sold character little figurines that you would put on that portal, and then that character would appear on your screen, and you could play as Mickey Mouse or Captain Jack Sparrow or whatever. Well, as they created more video games, they started to include Marvel characters and Star Wars characters, specifically after Disney purchased both those properties. Anyway, I say all that to say, I never played the game, but I really liked the figures because I'm a toy collector. So, Of course, I bought I bought all of the Star Wars characters. I got, Darth Vader, Han Solo, Luke Skywalker. They had everyone from the original trilogy, basically Chewbacca. Then they also had the sequel trilogy people, which was Kylo Ren and Rey and Poe. And then they also had Clone Wars people, which was, Anakin and Obi-Wan and whatnot. And then they had these other 5 that I had no idea who they were. I didn't recognize these characters, but they were listed under Star Wars, and I'm like, who the hell are these people? And I was like, I don't need them, so I did not include them. And if anyone knows me, I'm a collector who likes to have complete collections, but I was willing to cut these 4 other characters off, because I didn't know who they were. I didn't know who this purple monster looking guy was. I didn't know who this other 2 Jedis holding lightsabers were. But after I watched this series, the first thing I did was I went to eBay, and I didn't care what the prices were. I purchased all of the extra Rebels characters because they belong in my Star Wars Disney Infinity figure collection. So I guess, if nothing else, that's the best way I can put it of how important this show became on my Star Wars fandom.
Great story.
One note. For whatever reason, they did not make a Hera figure of her. They didn't.
That's unfortunate.
That is unfortunate. and reading about it, there was a lot of angry Rebels fans who said, well, why didn't you make a Hera character? But I agree. I wish that there was. That all the other ones are there except Hera and Chop. So
yeah, I feel like Rebels is one of those stories where it's like, for the people that love Rebels, it's number 1 for me. It's gonna be hard to top. I can't leave a character behind. I can't say that like, you can exclude this character. It's not possible. So I'd be in the same position. It's not even like a completionist type mentality. It's like, this is my family. They all have to be here.
Right. Exactly. So overall, a fantastic opening season to this great show. Rolly, did you have any expectations of season 2, or what do you think?
So I do expect to see. I want to know now what I'm going to talk as if I haven't seen Rebels, right? So if I hadn't already seen it, my expectations for season 2 is I want to know now how much of a role Ahsoka is going to play with the crew of the Ghost, and also, of course, with Ahsoka's appearance, she also brings the Rebel Alliance into the picture. So I'm interested to see how the Ghost crew starts integrating, operating with other Rebel cells, as now Ezra is completely enamored with the idea. Right. He's like, oh, we're a cell. Awesome. So that's my expectation to other expectations, like for our podcast, for example, talking about season 2, I expect to get more revelation on details that I have not seen in my 2 times that I've already seen season 2 of Rebels. So I'm excited to break down those episodes and shine some light onto those details for our viewers and listeners.
Right. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, I basically have the same thoughts that you do, except I'm flipping it, and I want to know if Vader's going to be the big baddie for season 2. How much Vader are we going to get as far as season 2 goes? I want to know if Ahsoka is going to be like a permanent member of the crew. Is she going to hang out with them from now on, or is she just going to kind of pop in and lead them a couple of episodes throughout the run of the season? Me too. I like seeing that. Now that they've become a cell and they're part of the Rebel Alliance, seeing other cells, seeing other characters come in to try and help them with their missions. And I definitely want to see more cameos from the nostalgic side of me, to see more cameos from past movie characters come in and pop in, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure.
So that brings us to the end of our season 1 recap. And Rolly, it's been a hell of a ride there with you. So I'm very thankful that you came along with me, or I came along with you, however you want to see it.
Yeah, thanks for making it happen, man. I know we specifically have to not only do homework, but set aside time so that we can do our podcast. But I'm glad. I'm always happy to do it, and I'm glad that you shared that same enjoyment with me. So I only ever want to put on a great product for the viewers and listeners, and it's awesome to share those comments and see that people are excited about the content that we're contributing to the Star Wars universe.
Right, definitely. Okay, so here's where I want to remind you guys once again to like, share, and subscribe, rate, share it with a friend. Let them know that this show exists. I also want to remind you guys again that we're going to be moving on to Fridays. This show would have already dropped on Friday, so you know that already. But just in case you were looking for it Wednesday, just a reminder once again, we're going to be dropping every Friday morning. Same time, same place, just different day. So that brings us to the end of this Season 1 recap. We will kick off next week with Season 2, Episode 1, which is called The Siege of Lothal, Part 1. It's a two-parter, so it's definitely going to end in some sort of a cliffhanger, and it's going to want me to just kind of speed through it and go watch number 2 and hope that week goes by really fast. But anyway, any parting thoughts, Rolly?
Nope. Excited to continue the journey. We still got 3 more seasons to go, so keep staying with us. We're not going anywhere. Plenty of Rebels ahead.
So if that's it, then this has been Pete Solis along with
Rolando Zamora
saying, may the Force be with you always. Goodbye from Lothal.